Wonderful. Welcome to Bloomerang Academy. Thank you so much for joining us today, where we are talking about how you can recapture your lapsed or lapsing donors. Joining us today is my partner in crime, the second half of Die Squared, Di Cox, who is our resident database consultant. She brings a wealth of experience to Bloomerang from the nonprofit world and the nonprofit technology sector. So we are very happy to have her with us today. Welcome, Di.
Hi, thanks so much, Diana. I'm Di. It's nice to meet everyone. I will let you know that I had surgery this past Wednesday. So for the sake of everybody involved, I'm going to have my camera off. I have not been cleared to get the cast wet yet, so I can't shower. So I will go ahead and take over the screen share and we'll get started.
And while Di is pulling up her screen, the email you receive after the class will also clarify how many points you get from attending each class. So check that out in the email. Thanks for being here, Di. I know we have a lot to cover, so please take it away.
Perfect. And you can see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Great. All right. So our agenda for today, first and foremost, why should I be worrying about lapsed or lapsing donors? So we're going to touch on that. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of data around lapsed and lapsing donors and donor retention today. We will talk about the difference between lapsing and lapsed, as well as active and inactive. And then we will hop into the database. I will show you guys the Bloomerang donor retention wheel, how to modify it and customize it, and what it means and how to pull a couple of reports from it. And then we will also talk about some engagement strategies for donors who are lapsing and re-engagement strategies for lapsed and inactive donors. And then I do have some additional things to talk about, specifically communication do's and don'ts when we're talking to donors who maybe haven't given in a little while. And then, of course, we'll have resources and live Q&A with our remaining time. So why worry about lapsed and lapsing donors? Essentially, it is much, much cheaper to retain your donors than it is to go out and find new donors. That's kind of the bottom line here. You only get a 1 to 2% return on investment with your new donors, but the return on investment with your current and then your lapsed donors who can be brought back in to be current donors is between 50 and 60%. So what that means is that after you send out that new letter to potential donors out in the world, you can expect a 1 to 2% ROI. So once you take the cost of mailing, mail houses, postage, paper, all of that, plus time to write out an appeal, it's much, much lower with brand new donors. When we're looking at people who have given, though, in the past, it's much higher. They already know you. They like you. They've given. So they already have a sense of belonging at your organization. And sometimes all it really takes is a little bit of nudging to remind them of that. So when we're talking again about that first-time donor retention is only 20%. So we're already talking about a 1 to 2% ROI on those new donors. There's only a 20% retention rate on new donors. So a 20% chance that they're going to give a second gift. Now, once they give that second gift, it more than triples their retention rate because, again, they like you, they've bought in, all of that. But sometimes people fall off. So it's really, really important to, talk about the retention rate of your donors who exist and not only bringing in your first-time donors. So controversial statement here, but it's true. If you have a ton of people lapsing, that could mean that there are some pretty serious gaps in your impact and cultivation strategy and efforts. 13% of donors stop giving because they were never thanked for their gift. So something as simple as a thank you can be that kind of impact or cultivation strategy that you're looking for, that thank you, letting them know how your money is going to be used, all of that is incredibly important. And that's 13% because they were never thanked. So think about your pool of donors. If you could keep 13% of your donors with a simple thank you, totally worth your effort. And then in this table down here, this is just some information for attrition rate if you're not working on bringing in new donors and or retaining your current donors. So all three start with a CRM of 1,000 constituents in it. And then we look at attrition rates of 20, 40, and 60%. And then how many donors you're left with after 1, 2, and 3 years. So when we start to talk about sustainability of an organization, this is not a sustainable model. It's really hard to do good things in the world with only 10 donors. So all of this needs to be considered. There needs to be a plan in place and really thinking through the importance of keeping your donors and keeping them happy and engaged really can be the difference between a massive crisis on the hands of your organization in the next 5 years and smooth sailing. So when we talk about lapsing donors versus lapsed donors, so these are Bloomerang definitions, and this goes back to the retention wheel, which again, we'll hop into the database and look at. But a lapsing donor is a constituent or household or organization who is not given in the past 12 to 24 months. So when Bloomerang is talking about donor retention, we're looking at a 2-year period. There are different ways to look at that. Again, we'll talk about all of this. But for the purpose of this slide, we'll talk about it as rolling year. So I have given, so that is the start of my year 1. We close out year 1, we're at 12 months. And then you have that next 12 months to give before I have lapsed. So as soon as I've given in year 1, but I haven't yet given in year 2, that's me lapsing. Until I give, I am a lapsing donor. So when we talk about lapsed donor, we have now hit that 24 months plus a day. So now I'm lapsed. I gave, and then I didn't give for, an entire year, an actual year in between the two. So whether that's rolling year, fiscal year, calendar year, there is still a year that I have not given since my last gift. So this again is the Bloomerang definition. This is the definition that we use for our retention wheel. With that said, your organization might have a different definition of lapsed donors, and that's okay. You'll just need to identify that, make sure everybody knows it, and then consistently use it in your reporting to be able to pull up your lapsed donors. So when we're talking about active versus inactive donors, there is not an actual Bloomerang definition for this. This is very much up to your team. So I've given you a working definition for both active and inactive here, and I'm basing that off of the previous definitions of lapsing and lapsed. So an active donor is someone who's given in the recent past. Recent is up to you. And then a working definition, if they've given in the last 2 years, they're active. So, we haven't necessarily hit that 2 year, or we're just over that 2 year. I would still consider that an active donor. To me, that is having given in the recent past. Again, that might adjust with your definition. A Cybunt report is going to be really helpful with this. A Cybunt report shows you someone who gave last year, but unfortunately not this year. So if they're in the Cybunt report, they are definitely still active. They just haven't yet given this year. So that can be kind of some low-hanging fruit to grab onto when figuring out who you should be reaching out to solicit. With inactive, we have that same kind of issue here. At some point in the past, they've given a gift. How far back is completely up to you and your team. The working definition that I've provided here, for me, if they haven't given in the last 3 years, they're inactive. So that doesn't mean they will never give again. It just means that they've truly lapsed. For me, they are off that that wheel and they didn't just come back like quickly afterwards. We've now been 2 full years without them having given a gift. And your Cybunt report, which is a template in Bloomerang, they gave some year, but unfortunately not this year. So again, if you're trying to figure out a good place to start to figure out, who hasn't given, you can start with that Cybunt report, and then you can figure out based on their last gift date if they are worth reaching out to again or not, or what kind of strategy you will employ to reach out to them. So I know I keep mentioning the retention wheel. The way that Bloomerang calculates a retained donor is returning donors in year 2 divided by all donors in year 1. And again, there's some ways that we can set what the definition of year 1 and year 2 are in the database, but we are looking over a 2-year period here. This does not include first-time donors because I haven't been a returning donor yet. I can't be. So if I've given a gift and it's my first gift, I am not showing up in your current retention wheel. I'll show up next year if I give again. Additionally, prospective donors, so people who have never given a gift, are not showing up here because it's returning donors and all donors, and they haven't given at all. And then inactive donors are not included in the retention period either. So if I gave 2 years and a day ago, I'm out. So I'm not being calculated anymore as part of this. So that is, a year and 2 days, I guess, or sorry, yes, that was right the first time. I'm sorry about that. But basically, if they haven't given in long enough, they're going to drop out of the retention wheel. So once we're done looking at year 2 of that period, you drop out. And again, you might consider that inactive. You may consider that not yet inactive. If I haven't given in 10 years, I'm definitely not in this wheel. So inactive is definitely not a part of this. It is based on the period of time of giving, and I have to have given a gift to be a part of it in the first place. So I'm going to click over to Bloomerang now and show you guys some of this so that hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. So let me get Bloomerang pulled up. All right, so we're in my sample database, and as you can see, I have a great donor retention here. 43% is actually the industry average. So obviously shoot for the moon, but we recommend you be roughly around that 43% retention rate. So if you're not quite there, you've got some work to do. If you're there, great job. If you have exceeded that, keep going and just work on it from where you are. But this is that really, really quick snapshot when you log onto your dashboard. Right now, this is in rolling year. And I know that because there's not a little box that says custom up here. So if you decide I want this to be on our fiscal year, or I want it to be based on a calendar year, the first thing we need to do is make sure that your settings are correct in Bloomerang. So anybody who is an admin has access to this little settings cog. So if I click on this and go to view all settings, there's a box up here called My Organization. So when I click edit here, you can see all of the information about my organization. But most importantly for right now, we are looking at this fiscal year start. So mine is set to January 1. You should go in and change this to whatever yours is, and then make sure you come up and save it afterwards. And that once your fiscal year is set, that'll make reporting easier because you can pull a report based on this fiscal year, last fiscal year, and it will allow you to pull up additional information on your retention goal. So once we go back to the dashboard, maybe, there it goes. Internet is fun. Diana, can you still hear me?
I can hear you, and I can see I can see the dashboard now.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad to hear that. All right, so if we click on this little settings cog up here, we now have some options for custom retention. So I will point out that with these campaigns, funds, and appeals here, this is for ones you want to exclude, not include. The reason we give this option is there are certain organizations where it makes a lot of sense for them to exclude a certain fund, for example. So if you have, like if you're a granting organization and you have pass-through dollars that are coming into a fund, or if you're a larger organization with member chapters and people can just pay to the larger organization and then it goes out to the chapters, you might want to exclude your chapter funds from this, or you might want to exclude, certain things that are happening, pass through dollars, that sort of thing. And that just gives you a view of what's coming in and staying in and being used for your organization. So we do give you the flexibility to exclude funds, campaigns, and appeals. For the vast majority of Bloomerang users, you're not going to exclude any. Now we have a date range. So you can see it already defaults on rolling year. I can also move this to fiscal year or calendar year. Since my fiscal year is set up the same as a calendar year, technically either of these can be chosen. They're going to show the same thing. But if I want to see people who are donating within 2 specific fiscal years or 2 specific calendar years, you can change it to that. Also, there's this include soft credits down here. It sort of depends on whether or not your organization wants to include this. So this is not a financial calculation. It's just whether or not someone has given. So if you have organizations that are individuals, that give through their organization, so it always comes out of their business, but it's their business, and you soft credit that gift, there's a really good argument for using soft credits here. Same goes with people who give through their DAFs, their donor advice funds, or community type fundraising groups. Again, if yes, this DAF belongs to person X, soft crediting person X can be important because if person X also gives out of their pocket, you wouldn't want them to show up as lapsed, and you wouldn't want them to receive communication from you, in any way, shape, or form that might imply that they're lapsed if they are not in fact lapsed. Last year they gave through their DAF, this year they gave out of pocket. So decide whether or not to include soft credits. There is no way to filter the soft credits. So we cannot say, well, only if it's a DAF, or only if it's through their business, or only if it's through this. So if you mainly use your soft credits for your solicitors, including your soft credits might not make a lot of sense. If you do it for both, I would still include it. Your solicitors won't be receiving this kind of, communication anyway, so no harm, no foul there. But just wanted to fully explain that as well. So if we come in here and we save this, we can now see that my donor retention has gone up to 81%, 13 of 16 donors retained. And then if we want to compare it to the last one, now I have a little box that says custom. I can drop down to default and I can see the rolling year giving. So no matter which one we're looking at, Bloomerang does a great job of making some reporting really, really quick for you. So if you click on the donor retention wheel, the dark part of the circle are the retained donors, and this light part are your lapsed donors. So if I click onto this green button, it is already going to pull a built out report specific to my donor retention. And we can take a look at who has been retained. It already gives us a ton of custom columns that's really helpful, plus contact information. So you can see all of that really, really easily right through this report. And the same thing happens when we click into the light side of the report. So if we want to see who has lapsed, we can come in and we can see who our lapsed donors are. So this is a really great way to see who never returned in year 2. So that is how you can click through and adjust your donor retention and be really on top of the set of time that makes the most sense for your organization to be reporting on. I also mentioned the Cybunt and Cybunt reports. So in Bloomerang, if you click on reports and go to report list, you go up to new, you have two options: build a report from scratch or start from a template. Bloomerang already has a whole bunch of other templated reports that are very similar to the two we just clicked into. You can adjust them, you can save them, but here we can see a Cybunt report and a Cybunt report. So if I pull up my Cybunt report, you can already see there are filters here. If you click in, you can see what we're looking at here, and you guys can adjust that if you need to. So make sure that, again, you can see down here, this says fiscal year. That's that default setting in this template. So make sure your fiscal year is set up correctly in Bloomerang. And now I have a report of everyone who gave some year, but not this year. So it's really important to take a look at all this so that you can see what's going on. You will notice that there are some future dated gifts here. Chances are in most people's databases, these would be typos. Mine are future dated to do some coaching work. So if you see anything that is future dated and it should not be future dated, change it. If you see anything that's future dated and it should be future dated, make sure you can explain to your auditors why it is future dated. So that is taking a look at Bloomerang, pretty quickly here, but being able to pull up a lapsed report, being able to take a look at that. If you wanted to see people who haven't given an X number of years, you can also pull reports on that. So since this is not a reports call, I'm going to go through very quickly, and I'm going to quickly build one of these out for you guys. The support team can help you with this if it's something you need. So I want to see people where their last gift was more than 3 years ago. So I'm going to say this date was between, I'm not going to put a start date, but I just want their last gift to be 12/31. We'll say 2016, just for fun. And since it is a sample database, nobody may pop up. So we can adjust this. Let's see if there's anyone for 2017. But if you guys need to do some calling in your database, or if you have, an intern or a special team that is going to work on really lapsed donors, this can be a really great way of identifying those people, and either coming in and marking them as inactive, or coming in and, deciding you're going to do a mass delete if it's a huge number, or deciding, okay, this is going to be the group that we're going to give to, someone with some free time on their hand. And I know you guys are all laughing at that because that doesn't happen at nonprofits. So intern is going to be your best bet for this. But you can quickly pull those reports to see last giving with that later date in it, if that's kind of the route that you want to go for it. All right, so I'm going to go back to the presentation. And let's take a bit of a Q&A break. I know I threw kind of a bunch of definitions at you guys, so I just want to make sure there aren't any questions at this point about anything I've covered.
Thanks, Di. We have a lively group today, so lots of great questions coming in.
All right.
But there is a question that I wanted to ask everyone. Can you talk a little bit more about the benefits of marking donors as active or inactive? And I know we're going to look at some strategies for re-engagement today.
Yeah.
But what are some of the benefits of tracking that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of benefits in it, kind of, again, depending on how your organization wants to use it, which is why Bloomerang doesn't just automatically default people as inactive. So most people will pick a time period. So again, we can go off of my working definition of 3 years. So anybody who hasn't given in 3 years, they'll go in and they'll mark inactive. The purposes for that is one, if you've decided we need a separate strategy for that group, sending them our appeal letter every quarter is a waste of money at this point. you can exclude anyone who's marked as inactive. So that'll quickly call that group out. They're not receiving every single appeal letter. They're not receiving all of that. And you can communicate with them in a more appropriate way than a, hey, we're doing this really great thing. You interested? Because they're not. They've shown you they're not. We want to make them interested. But your appeal letters aren't hacking it with them. So that can be one reason. Two, if you are in Bloomerang, for example, we have a license count. So everyone has a license number of constituents that they can have in their database. And you can do a mass delete as a data service. It's a flat rate of $100 no matter how many people you're deleting. So if you ask us to mass delete 5 people, we will, and it'll cost you $100. If you ask us to mass delete 1,000 people, we will, and it'll cost $100. So a lot of people will mark inactive to make sure that they have that kind of growing list for a mass delete. Some really common number of years, we do see 3, 5, and 7. I don't know why it's all odd numbers. What I generally recommend to people, unless you are butting up against that license limit, take it out 7 years because that's how far back you can get audited. So it's just easier to have everything in your database for the last 7 years. If you are butting up against that license count, take a look at the last 5 or the last 3, and then you can pull that out and archive it. It's a pain when it comes to your audits, but you have that data. It's not like it's lost. It's just not in the database anymore. Another reason for marking people inactive are for people or organizations where for whatever reason you want to keep them in the database. And again, there are really great use cases for this. But that they do not want solicitation. So either there was a fallout in some way, or they're going to give a planned gift, but they're not going to give a gift between now and that planned gift, or it's an organization that you've worked with and they're a granting organization, but you've decided that they're not going to be a good fit for your programming. So you don't want to ask for a grant from them, but you want to keep them in the database so that 3 years from now, when someone else new stumbles across that grant and says, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea to go for this grant? You can look in your database and see exactly why you didn't. And if something has changed since then, you now have all of the information there, but it can be just a really quick way to say, no, we applied for that one in the past and we were told it is a good fit, or, we're not going to, because even though it is a good fit, it has XYZ strings attached to it and we can't mess with that, or whatever the situation is. So there's a good reason to have inactive donors in your database, but you also, marking them that way can be a great indicator for, special population communication, for mass deleting eventually, or just kind of is archival information. As a note, because we get asked this a lot, anybody marked inactive still costs a license count in Bloomerang. So if you're going to mark them inactive, it's not like they no longer count towards your license count. So be aware of that as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Di.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's all the questions we have for now.
Okay. All right. So next, we're going to get into some engagement strategies. So we're first going to talk about those lapsing donors. So they just haven't given that second gift. So we're in year 2, we're waiting for them to give that gift, or we're in whatever time frame that you consider to be lapsing. So the first thing that you need to do is create a plan. We get asked all the time again, how do we scale this for smaller orgs? You absolutely can. For smaller organizations, I would say make it simple and consistent. That's all you need to do. Something else to consider is how you will engage with your lapsing donors. So if you are a larger organization with a lot of resources at your disposal, you can break out who's getting a call, who's getting a note, who's getting like a general piece that we're going to send out. How are they getting that? Is everything going to be by mail? Are we emailing them? So that's a lot to consider in the larger organizations. In the smaller organizations, decide we're going to do X, Y, and Z, everyone's getting the same. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be specialized. But if you have someone who, last year gave a gift that you would consider to be a major donor, there's a chance that they're going to lapse. And that's okay because they just gave a huge gift. Major gifts can take a really small toll on your retention rate if they decide not to give another gift this year because they just gave you a $25,000 gift last year. So they need a cultivation piece, right? They probably need a call just to say thank you again for that because it's been a minute since you've done it. So your stewardship strategy for major donors should be playing a role here as well. But for anybody that is not in that major donor category, pick it over a dollar amount. If they gave over $500 last year, even if your major gift level is, $1,000, that should be someone higher up the organization. So either executive director level, maybe even your board, if your board likes to call and say thank you for things. If your board is a little gun shy when it comes to fundraising, this is actually a really great way to get their foot in the door because all they're doing is saying thank you. So you can kind of decide who does what and what kind of communication are they receiving. Make sure that's broken out. Everybody understands that. And you guys, are pulling reports to make sure that people are properly falling into these different categories. So I've given an example plan here. Again, for the smaller shops, make sure you're just adjusting this to what makes sense for you. So for example, everyone's going to get an impact cultivation piece. Go through what you're going to talk about. What are your wins? What's coming up? Why should they be excited? What is the impact of them being a part of your organization? An impact or cultivation piece is never a solicitation. So you are not going to ask them for a gift in this piece. You are just talking about the organization. And then your next steps might be anyone who gave more than X is going to get a call. Anyone who does this gets a note. Then after everyone's received that, you're going to wait a period of time. Again, you guys all know your donors. There's no right or wrong answer on how long this takes. But then you're going to create an appeal asking them to help achieve all of those goals you just talked about, help with the impact, help with the mission. So this is kind of a really simple way to get people excited, get a thank you potentially, or just a discussion of success over the time period. Larger shops might break out some other things they're going to do and then send out your appeal. Basically, we just never want our donors ever to feel like they're nothing more than a dollar sign. So hearing about the wins, hearing about what is exciting, hearing about your mission and how your mission is in action, that is way more exciting than, hey, you want to give me $50? I might, but I want to know all of this really exciting stuff. So get them excited first and then ask them. So make sure that no matter what you're doing, the first communication with them is not about money. So again, this is an example plan. If you guys do it better, if there is something that works for you, oh my gosh, please put it in the comments because everyone needs to hear your magic sauce on this. Everyone needs it. So this is a really simple plan for things that you can do if you're just getting started. Listen to people who've been doing it in the comments. They'll give you awesome advice if they have it. So this is for lapsing donors. Now, when we're talking about lapsed or inactive donors, you're going to see a theme here. You need to create a plan. But for smaller organizations, you kind of need to decide where your time and energy is most valuable. That obviously is something that larger organizations need to worry about as well. But when you can quickly delegate a task to somebody else further down the totem pole, that is much less of a constraint than if you are the only man on the totem pole, or if there are two of you and that second person already is overwhelmed. So make sure you kind of decide, how far back is it worth my time? And then you still have that same question, how are you going to engage with them? So that hasn't changed from the last slide. And then you have to ask, how long will you attempt to re-engage with your lapsed and inactive donors? Frankly, this is a decision I think every organization should make. I think this is something that should be discussed. And I think that after you have hit whatever that wall is that you put up, you should really be considering potentially removing them from your database because you've decided that at this point that's not worth your effort. So the plan here is a little bit different. Again, you can do other things. You can actually do the pass strategy from the other screen. But I think this gives you a little bit more to work with. So if someone has already lapsed or they are inactive at the moment, they're not as high priority as preventing people from lapsing. So Bloomerang has some survey options, and one of them is a lapse donor survey. So if you turn that on, as soon as somebody lapses, they're going to get an email with one question that basically says, like, why are you no longer giving? And then there are a whole bunch of different reasons. And one of the reasons is, oh no, I'm still an active donor. So if your definition of what a lapsed donor or someone who isn't giving anymore doesn't match with their definition, they might consider themselves, a donor to the organization because they plan on giving again. So you can set that up. It runs without you having to do anything with it. And then if they respond back to it, it appears in their timeline under interactions, and you can see all of their reasons and you can run reports on it. Another strategy that I have found to be helpful, normally I would call it spring cleaning, but we're in August and it's muggy and that just doesn't seem fair. So I called it a verify your contact information sheet. Basically what you're doing is asking them, hey, we're going through our database and we want to make sure we have the most updated contact information for you. Please fill this out and then either respond via snail mail if that's how you've sent it out, or if you're doing it via email, send them the link to your website where you're basically just doing a constituent form if you're using Bloomerang forms, and they can go in and correct any contact information. That can be a really quick way to see if they are even willing to engage with you if it's updating their contact information. If the contact information is correct but they don't care, they're not going to respond back. And if it's correct, but they don't really want to hear from you anymore, they're probably also not going to respond back. There is also option 3. They never received it because the information was wrong. But regardless, they're not willing to interact with you. If I had an organization that I cared about and I moved and I hadn't heard from them, at some point it would click with me, oh, they probably don't have my new contact information. And I would just reach out. So again, kind of be aware that there are people who may not want to hear from you anymore, and that's okay. Again, that group's not worth your time to continue to try to engage right now. And then create an impact and cultivation piece. I would recommend if you have their email, do it via email. It's cheaper and you're not getting any return on investment from this group yet. So start with email, send to snail mail for anyone you don't have an email address for. And again, we're not asking for a gift. Then you can follow up with an appeal asking for a gift. But you want to make sure that with this group, they are not feeling like a dollar sign. At this point, we've done a couple of different steps to make sure that they don't feel like a dollar sign. And then we follow up with that appeal. So again, how long will you attempt to re-engage your lapsed and inactive donors? If you decide to do this thing twice a year and you're, shifting back and forth between email and snail mail communication and you don't hear from them, tally up how much time, energy, labor, and actual expense it has cost you to continue working with this group, and then take a look at your return on investment. You absolutely will get older donors returning to the fold this way. So it is worth your time, but if I haven't given in 9 years and I'm not responding to this, I am probably a lost cause. If I haven't given in 4 years and then I do respond to this, keep me going. I should definitely be part of this group that you're working with. So, if they return the contact information sheet and, they provide a phone number or an email, you can always then follow up again and just say, hey, thank you so much for submitting this. We have it correct. We're really excited to start communicating with you again. And then that very next communication piece is that impact cultivation. So you're telling them on the things they've missed out on. So now you're showing them what you've done without them, and you're also providing goals for the upcoming year. And so you can talk about things you're excited about. And so they're going to understand, wow, they did so much and they're going to do so much. And if they're excited and they see the impact that dollars are making, there's a much better chance that they're going to respond to that appeal in a favorable way. So some communication do's and don'ts here. Do talk in positive terms. So say thank you, not thank you for your gift that you gave 2 years ago, just thank you for being a donor, because at one point or another, they were a donor. Make sure they understand your mission. Make sure they understand all of the wins. Make sure they feel like a partner in your goals. So these were the goals that we set. These are the goals we achieved. We're so excited about this. Impact. So because of all of our wonderful donors, last year we were able to do impact thing 1, impact thing 2, impact thing 3. We were able to improve the lives of this whole group, or we were able to salvage and save X, Y, or Z. We took care of animals. Whatever you're doing, we saved people from a terrible situation. We helped with education. All of those things are important to show and to talk about and be excited about over and over and over. And then talk about the future. So upcoming events, future goals, things you want to do next year. You can even talk, since this past year was crazy for everyone, you can talk in this, impact piece about how you had to change your programming, and you were really proud of your staffing group and consumers, because once you made that change, you were still able to offer services. For some people, you weren't able to offer services. So if it was we couldn't do it at all, or we had to pare it way back, talk about that. Talk about why you're excited to get back to face. All of those things are really important, and that is a shared experience. We all just had to sacrifice at least one thing, if not 1,000 things in the last year. So if you can talk about that, but how you overcame it and how excited you are for the future, that still matters. That gives them hope for theirs. So do just be so positive in all of this communication. On the don't side, we do not want to acknowledge words like lapsing, lapsed, or inactive, or what their status is. Those are really internal words. So those are definitions that you guys create. Those are boxes that you put people into for very important reasons. But somebody who maybe gave 18 months ago might be really, really offended to hear that you're considering them lapsing. It lacks some empathy, because if you gave a gift 18 months ago, but then you lost your job due to COVID, and being told that you're lapsing, so I'm reaching out to you, I may not be able to afford a gift right now. I might still be digging out of the pit of the last year in my life. So we don't want to do anything that implies that they're that dollar sign, that we haven't seen that dollar sign, and making people feel bad. This is not the time to shame people into giving. I would argue there absolutely are times for that, but this is not one of them. So we don't want to make them feel bad or shamed. If you tell them that you can't achieve your mission without their help, frankly, you're lying to them, because you have been. And again, shaming them is not the way to get them interested or excited about your mission. And so just make sure that as you're talking to them and writing these pieces, you're staying positive, that you can show what you did last year, that you can talk about the future, that you're excited, that your organization has so much impact and does so much good in the world, and you just want to share that with them. You want to get them excited about that so that they can help you. They can be that partner. They can do good things in the world with you. So I'm going to pause here. Do we have any other questions at this time?
Hi, Di. Thank you for that. That's a great point. What about for memberships that are lapsing?
So memberships and donations are two different strategies. I would say if your membership is lapsing, and I know this sounds weird, it kind of depends on how you define membership. So we have a membership to the Indianapolis Zoo. It is good for exactly 12 months from the day I purchased it. So it's just gone after that. But there's no additional gift on top. There's no nothing. It isn't barring me from coming to the zoo after that. I just have to pay the non-member rate. So if it's that kind of a membership like the zoo, shaming is probably the wrong word, but saying like, you're going to miss out. There's some really cool things happening next year and you're going to miss out on that. That would be an appropriate strategy. If it's a kind of membership where there really is no benefit, I hate to say it, but if membership is more just kind of the term that you give your donors, this is the strategy you need to be using when reaching back out to those people as well. If, however, they're considered a member, if they give a minimum donation of $100 a year, letting them know, hey, your membership is going to lapse, you need to pay the other $100, totally makes sense. But when we're talking about just donors, I care about animal welfare. So I made a $25 donation to the zoo. If I don't give that $25 donation next year, if I don't give a gift next year and I'm lapsing, telling me that I'm lapsing, it is a little jarring because I didn't have to give that donation. I'm not a member. I did that because I really care about, animal welfare. But then my question to that is, if I haven't given to you in the last year, there's probably a reason. So that goes way back to that slide with something missing from impact cultivation. Maybe I didn't lose my job from COVID. Maybe there's just an organization that I care more about, or maybe I moved. Maybe, maybe I was really, giving to the zoo only specifically because of the penguins, and then the zoo stopped having penguins. Now all of a sudden I have no reason to give it to the zoo because what I cared about were penguins. So that's why wording it is so important. Maybe there aren't penguins there anymore, but maybe there's something else I can be really excited about. So talking about that, talking about the wins, talking about everything that goes along with that, I might say, well, okay, there's no penguins there, but yeah, they're doing some great things and this does sound cool. And now I want to give. If you're just telling me that hey, I didn't give my gift, give us your money. My response is, nope, you're all out of penguins. So, making sure that we're phrasing this appropriately and keeping people excited and keeping it really positive is going to have more of a return on your efforts and in your investment than just informing someone they haven't given in 2 years. I know I haven't given in 2 years. I haven't given in 2 years. Where's my motivation to give? Because just not having given clearly is not enough of a motivation for me to keep giving.
Awesome. Thanks. I know we still have a couple more slides to go, so I'll hold questions till the end.
Okay. All right. So I do have up here some additional considerations. So this goes back to making a plan, making that strategy, figuring out who you're going to be working with, who's doing what. So I know there's a ton up here. I am really just going to read this down. Sorry about that. I don't often read my slides. But you do need to figure out who is in charge of reaching out to your lapsing, and then who is in charge of reaching out to your lapsed and inactive donors. That might be the same person. It might be different people, but someone needs to own this process. It can't just be something we do. That's cute, but someone actually needs to do it because lapsing can turn into lapsed very quickly. So laying out who is doing it, what those duties look like, what the responsibilities are, and what a timeline looks like is going to be really important. So for everyone who is now a stakeholder in this, so part of their job description includes this, do they know how to record interactions, use tasks, use BCC to Bloomerang? So we need to make sure they know how to use the software. I know not everyone listening is a Bloomerang customer, so do your stakeholders know how to use all of the different tools in your database, or know how you record things in Excel, to make sure that yep, so-and-so was contacted is listed. Make sure that people know what's upcoming. That's that tasks, it's your to-do list. And then know how to, in Bloomerang, you can copy things from email and it sends directly to Bloomerang. If that's not your case, how to attach an email or how to go back in and enter it, whatever you need to do. How can your board help? So creating a lapsing and lapsed donor strategy takes some time to figure out. The beginning, and including your board up front can be a really great way, again, to get them involved, get them used to reaching out to your constituents. So first-time donor calls is a great thing for your board to do. We talked about that if we can get them to give that second gift, it really ups their retention rate. So, starting on the ground floor with making sure that first-time donors are getting a phone call is important. And then, can they leverage any personal relationships? If you have a lapsed list, send it to your board monthly, weekly, however often you guys decide to look that up. And if your board happens to know any of those people on that lapsing list or on that lapsed or inactive list, they might be able to do the reach out directly from them, or they might be able to help you with strategy. Oh, he'll respond best to a phone call, or she is going to respond back best to an email, or yeah, we didn't do a great job. They don't really understand what we do, so we need to work on them that way and pull them back in later. So your board can really be an asset here, especially as you're kind of figuring out what you need to do and how to do it. What will you do with your donors who you have made inactive? So I have, say that you can do mass deletes on that, and then mark them as inactive. And then once you have enough constituents in there that are inactive that justifies a mass delete, then go ahead and reach out to support and get your mass delete going. I will say, again, a mass delete's $100. So I personally would not do a mass delete with less than 100 constituents. That's $1 per constituent. If you're not butting up against that license count, take it out further. You're getting more bang for your buck for every constituent that gets added into that. Who or how will you prioritize who is most valuable to retain? So again, this goes back to a lot of small shops really figuring out where to prioritize. Are you going to base it on, strictly their last gift date, their largest gift amount? Are we going to look at our generosity score? Are we going to look at lifetime revenue? There are a bunch of different ways to approach this. So again, figuring out who are your most valuable to retain and then focusing on that group first will help you get all of the kinks out of this program, make sure that you understand what it's going to look like, how much time it'll take. And then you can, of course, expand that out. If you're a small shop, you may not have the resources to expand that out, and that's okay too. But make sure that your most valuable players are still in this game. And then who is in charge of updating your database policies and procedures manual with this process and all of this new information? And then how does this effort fit into your development plan? If you don't have a policies or procedures manual, you can find a sample one on bloomerang.com. And if you don't have a development plan, you can find a sample on bloomerang.com. We also do have academy classes on both of those, so database management and on a development plan. The resources on the website and the academy videos are free to anybody, not just Bloomerang customers. So make sure you hop on there and take a look at those two resources, watch the academy videos, make sure that your database and your development plan are being handled appropriately every single year. And this last one, and this is what I'm also calling my hate mail slide, because I know I'm going to get hate mail for this. Does data hoarding really pay off? What I consider to be a data hoarder is people who gather up every little piece of data about everybody they meet. So whether they've given, whether they haven't given, it doesn't matter. Whether they've given in the last 10 years or in the last 25 years, we're keeping all that data. So I have a challenge for anybody who feels there is absolutely no point in ever doing a mass delete, and there is absolutely no point or reason to ever stop sending an appeal letter to somebody, regardless of the length of time it's been since they gave. So first of all, I would create a list of everyone who hasn't given in the last 3 years. I pulled that report. Again, the support team can help you with that. Of that list, figure out everyone who has received at least one paper appeal from you, and then figure out what your approximate cost is of sending one paper appeal, and then multiply that cost by the number of appeals you've sent to all of those inactive donors. And as a bonus question, how much is the additional license count in Bloomerang annually to house all of these donors that are truly inactive? And so the reason that I recommend this and I recommend doing this challenge is because I've had some very unhappy people in the past tell me that recommending doing a mass delete is a terrible idea because they had someone who had been a donor 20 years ago, and if they hadn't sent that last appeal letter to that donor, they would not have received that $25 from them. And they started giving again after 15 years, after 20 years. So the goal is that one $25 gift for that one donor that hasn't given in 20 years, is that actually financially worth it with everything else we've just looked at and calculated? If the answer is yes, great. But you need to figure out what the amount is of all of that you've done over the last several years, and then figure that out, because that's gonna be a pretty big number. If 3 years doesn't look like a big number, do it for 5, do it for 10. The calculation should be really simple at that point. And then also figure out, how much of a license count are you looking at, because you're going to be adding people too. So how frequently are you upping your license count? How much are you kind of dredging through to get to that core donor base? And how much additional work is it to be keeping all of that information on all of those people, and constantly reaching out to them with nothing coming back? So there will absolutely be those diamond in the rough people who they magically gave $1,000 because of a COVID letter that you sent out. And I would say that's amazing. I would also say that, maybe for your lapsed donors or, inactive donors, it would make more sense to only send them those special appeals, because they hadn't been giving up until then, which means it was that special circumstance that made them give, not your mission that you've been talking about for the last 15 years. So again, I would definitely challenge everybody to make sure that you are aware of how much is outgoing, how much effort, how much everything is happening for what you're getting in return. All right, and then here's your resources page. And do we have any other questions, Diana?
Thanks, Di. Lots of great discussion in the chat as well. And that's why we always advocate talking through your organization, what your conventions are for how you're going to mark inactive and what you're going to do with them. We also have a question here. How often or on what schedule do you recommend using the lapsing and lapse strategy? Once a year, every 6 months, etc.?
Well, lapsing, since that's done very much on a rolling basis, that's probably something you should be doing, if not monthly, quarterly, or decide we're only going to use, lapsing based on our fiscal year or calendar year. So once you've made that decision of what time period you're looking at, reaching out to your lapsing donors, it might be that every month you do whatever the first part of it is, and then every 6 months you send out the appeal letter, to pull them back in. Just remember that if I was lapsing in month 3 and I don't get my appeal letter till month 6 and I lapsed in month 4, I'm now considered lapsed in Bloomerang, and then I'm not counting towards that retention wheel anymore until the next 2-year period, if that makes sense. So it's that returning donors in year 2. So I would have to return at that point. So this is why it's important to understand how your donors are lapsing, how often. You're probably, for example, if you do a big golf tournament every year, you're probably going to have a lot of people showing as lapsing, because the last time they gave was at that golf tournament. So again, this is one of those situations where not everybody's strategy can be exactly the same. It's really specific, but knowing kind of the cycles of donations at your organization can help a lot as well. If you know that summers, you guys are just down in donations during the summer, it might be worth it for everybody who's lapsing who gave over the summer last year. maybe it is just worth it to reach out and do a phone call because there's only like 6 of them. But know that, doing this lapsing exercise on the way up to a golf tournament, probably not going to make a lot of sense. You're probably going to be able to look at that list and say 98% of these people will be coming to this golf tournament and or giving to it. So maybe it's, 2 weeks after the golf tournament, you reach out to people. Same with galas, same with walk and runs, that kind of stuff. So again, if you're kind of aware of cyclically how your donors give, that will inform your strategy here. With lapsed and inactive donors, some organizations decide to still reach out quarterly, some once a year. Again, it's very much up to you guys. How much capacity do you have? How much time does the person who's owning this part of the process have to do it? And then how long are you going to be reaching out to them?
Wonderful, thank you. We have so many great discussions happening in the chat as well. We have a question, what about for tribute gifts or event registrations that are often one-time deals? How should or shouldn't they be included in lapsed donor plans?
Yeah, so those are 2 very different examples, but both really important. So for event registration, everyone who runs events knows that there is a certain segment of their donor base that will only come to events and are only going to give because of the event. So again, with COVID last year, screwed up a whole bunch of people's events. What I would say is, doing some sort of impact or cultivation piece for the next year about what events are coming up, what's going to be happening, again, can be a really great way to get that group interested in what's upcoming. Sending them an appeal worth your time at least once. There's a chance that they won't give to that appeal, but then when that next event comes up, make sure that they're getting a follow-up about the event. So that's how I would handle that. As far as tribute gifts, so again, this is, there's no one size fits all on this, but what you could do as, again, just as an impact thing, every year around the time, if it's a memorial gift, you could just send out a card or even an email just saying like, hey, we know this is a rough month for you. We just want to, send you some happiness or do whatever. Again, that's a cultivation strategy. It is not aimed to get a second gift out of them for whatever it was. But, they gave to your organization because the organization was important to that person or to the family of that person. And acknowledging that isn't a bad thing. So making sure that, they are being reminded in a really loving, positive way can have a huge impact on it. It might make them want to give again. They might at some point say, wow, now I understand why this person cared so much about this organization. But again, never make an ask in something like that. For things that we're in honor of, those are most likely going to be fewer and further between. Some people every year on their birthday ask their friends to make a gift to a certain charity. And so you can expect that gift to come in every year. Again, it's probably not going to be upgraded. They're not going to keep giving more, but they're going to give on their friend's birthday. If it was something like in honor of someone's high school graduation, well, then that is a one-off. And you just, again, kind of need to understand that, take a look at it. And if you have a special appeal that's for like, honorarium gifts, that would be a good potential reason to exclude that appeal from your donor retention list. If you don't have the time or capacity or the willingness to reach out to people who made a memorial gift, I would probably also include that appeal to exclude from your donor retention wheel as well, just to make sure that your numbers might look smaller, but it's not being artificially inflated. So again, really good use case for that exclude function. And again, depending on your time and capacity, it might make a lot of sense to just exclude it versus, those cultivation pieces for those groups.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Di, for all of that wonderful discussion and a lot of things to think about. That's why a lot of these things we advocate, this is a possible strategy that you can follow, but ultimately it's really up to you and your organization. And I always love like questions and getting some things to think about. Thank you again, everyone, for all of your great questions, all of your great insights through the chat. I love watching the discussions that are happening and how we all help each other learn from each other. So thank you so much for being here today and spending part of your time with us and sharing your insights as well. Any last minute thoughts today, Di, before we say goodbye to our friends today?
Well, thank you, everyone. I didn't realize I was over on time. So thank you to everyone who's still here. Honestly, I would just say that I don't watch discussion while I'm doing this. I find it very distracting in the best possible way because I'm like, ooh, what exciting things are they talking about? Oh yeah, I should be talking right now. I always though love that you guys do talk, that you do share. I always read everything afterwards. But really thank you guys for being engaged, for realizing that this is a complicated process. There is no one size fits all. This is one of the more scalable things, in my opinion. If you have a fleet of people working for you, this can be done really easily and streamlined. If there are 3 of you staring at each other in the same office, it gets more complicated, but it is still so doable. So really just realize that something that I said may not work for you, and that's okay. You will find a better way to do it. And then the next time that someone hops on to this kind of a call from your organization, you can be the one saying, well, actually, we do this and it works out way better for us. And then other people get really excited about that too. So yeah, thank you guys just so much today.
Yes, thank you. And please share it with us too. We love hearing those things. But thank you again for being with us today. We hope that this has been helpful and this has given you some great questions to take back to your team and find out a method that works for your team. And we hope that we see you in another Academy class soon. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.